Well, hi everyone, this is Bob Wolf from Agilon, and like Amanda said, we're going to talk a little bit today about some proposal best practices. If we can move forward. There we go. So I guess one of the things that I wanted to start this session off talking about is how important it is to engage your staff when it comes to determining how best to use proposals. There's a lot of different features within proposals that we'll be looking at today, or at least the ones that I think are the most critical to using proposals. But before we even talk specifically about them, and for those of you who have implemented anything along with the prospect module and maybe even specifically with proposals, it's very important that we establish buy-in from our leadership to both support taking the time to roll out new processes and procedures around proposals, as well as once we decide what those processes and procedures are, to be able to back up the fact that we've put these new things into place. There's so many times when we think we have a good idea and we roll something out, but then we don't have any teeth to help to back it up and make it actually work the way that it should by not supporting what those rules are. So the first thing that I just wanted to make sure that we thought about as we're looking at implementing these new proposal rules is to make sure that we do have that buy-in and support from our leadership. The second thing that is so important about these new proposals features that we might be looking at is to make sure that as you're determining to use some of these new features, that you build in some accountability reporting. And I'll talk more specifically about what some of those reporting things might be on specific features. But as we are asking somebody, our development officers in this case, to do new things or to track new things within proposals, we need to be able to back that up with the ability to report on what those things are. For example, if we want our development officers to be putting in their contact notes, not prospect related or proposal related, but we want them to be able to put in their prospect notes, we need to be able to have reporting in place to manage those or to know whether or not that's actually happening. So that's what I'm kind of talking about with accountability reporting. The other thing that I think is very important with proposals is as you're turning on some of the features within proposals, we need to be able to prove not only to our leadership team, but to the rest of the organization, to the development officers that are going to be using these proposals, we have to be able to prove that there is a quantifiable benefit to the organization. Not just that we want you to do this, but this is how it's going to benefit the organization. This is how it's going to benefit your workflow and your ability to handle your job and be able to do your job better. And lastly, with these new rules, it's very important to not just turn on a new feature, and the features we'll talk about in proposals, to not just turn on that feature, but make sure that we have provided clear direction and an objective, even if that means we roll these things out slower than what we might normally want to. Being able to provide that clear direction, this is why we want you to use this is exactly how I want you to use it, this is how we're going to report on it, and make sure that all of those things are well known so that they adopt these new processes that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to flip back and forth between some of these topics and looking at the proposal module or proposal screens within one. The first thing that I want to look at is talking just about naming the proposal. Now, I'm going to be showing you some of these features that are in the 4.4 instance of 1, because there's in previous versions for your proposal name, you had, we'll just go ahead and look at it. In the proposal module, if we just drill into a proposal, when we created a new one, and this piece hasn't changed at all. When you had a new one, you could either look up the proposal number in the lookup here, or you could type in a name that maybe wasn't in the proposal lookup. And it really didn't have a huge impact to how you use the actual application. Now, it could have some impact on reporting when you're trying to group things together, grouping proposals together. But as far as what you actually saw on screen and how your development officers might be using the proposal module, there really wasn't a big impact to what your naming convention was. In 4.4, that is going to change a little bit, and that's because of the new feature in there called proposal search. So I really want you to think about either tying your proposal to a specific fund number, which is what's part of that lookup that we see in here. When you look this up, this brings up your fund list. So proposals designated to a specific fund. Or if it's not something that's tied to a specific fund, make sure you tie it to an option that you have added to the UHelp proposal code table. Now, I'll show you what that looks like. And having a specific naming convention for what those proposal codes would look like. Let me give you an example. So if you have a building project, or if you have something that's just generically a proposals that are generically being produced for the a specific college or College of Engineering. You may not have a fund set up for that, but you may want to group all proposals by College of Engineering. Even if that label changes later on when we get a bit more definition to that, adding that grouping to the UHelp proposal code gives us a great way to find, look up, and see all of those proposals to that common group. So if we come into 4.4, and I'm just going to go to the UHelp table in administration. Not everybody will have access to the help table, but this could certainly be granted to certain users. And I'm going to look for items in the help table that are tied to prospects, and then look for proposal codes. So what these are in the UHelp proposal code table are additions to that lookup table. The lookup table already has all the funds. These are the additions that are made to that. It would be important also to make sure that you come up with some kind of naming convention for the code so that you can find these things easily in the lookup. I've designated my codes to start with an asterisk. That you could certainly use something else, but this is one of those good tips that will help you to find these. So I've designated all my codes with asterisks, and now when I go into a proposal and if I add a new proposal and do my lookup, because I'm sorting first by this first column, which is the fund number, all of those items that I added with an asterisk are going to float to the top of this list. Otherwise, you'll end up with, you could certainly find it by other elements, sorting by group, maybe for a blank group code, since all funds need a group code. But by having this special naming convention for those for the proposal codes, this allows you to find them easier. So in this case, I want to identify this as just something that's tied to the Ag Learning Center. This is a micro campaign. And now I have a coded value, and a value micro campaign Ag Learning Center that I can use to name my proposal. I'm going to go ahead and set this up with a date just to start it up in Qualification. And Qualification typically doesn't have, or not necessarily has a manager. So I'm just going to save it with that information to show you the other reason. So being able to find it in proposal search. So today, for those of you who are not on 4.4, when you go to the proposal page, the only option you have here is to look at proposals for a particular prospect. So in this case, Stephen Smart's proposals, which we see. In 4.4, we've added a new option of View By, and it lets you view by the search. And this is why naming is becoming more important. So now we can look for all proposals via the proposal search, and we can look for them by all these different parameters. So for example, if I wanted to find all of those that are tied to, so just doing my search, to the Ag Learning Center, I can select that from the list and search. And this will bring up all proposals that are to that particular grouping of micro-campaign Ag Learning Center. I may also want to include other search parameters, like I only want to include those that are completed or not, and we'll talk about some of these other instances. So naming our proposals via that proposal code gives us a really easy way to find our grouping of proposals and include that then in our proposal search. Before I move on to the next item, does anybody have any questions about naming a proposal? That sounds like a resounding no. We'll go ahead and move on. So the other thing that I think is definitely something you need to consider as you're establishing your proposal and the methodology behind them is to determine your gift type. So if we look at what's happening within a proposal, we have a field called gift type. Now, although this is found in the search, it's also part of the pledge or part of the proposal. And I typically use this to identify how the gift is going to be coming in. So once the proposal is actually paid down, how do we expect to get the money in? That's my preference. What I'd like you to think about in your organization is what is a variable that makes reportable sense for us? Do we care about whether or not we have proposals that are out there that are going to come in as cash, or proposals that are going to come in as a gifting kind, or that are going to come in as a pledge? Do you need that designation or that the ability to find proposals in those different buckets? If not, then let's think of some other kind of bucketing for our proposals that we could utilize within gift type, so that again we can find all proposals that are coming in by gift that we're going to come in for as cash, for example. So like I say here, the value of the codes, so whether or not it's an outright gift or a pledge or a gifting kind or a planned gift, that's really less important than the fact that you just use this field to group together your proposals. I like to use cash, gifting kind, planned gift, and pledge because of the ability to use it in prospect search, and then just being able to pull out your proposals and say this is what we're expecting to come in, and this is the method in which we expect it to come to us. How about gift type? Is there any discussion around gift types and how it's been used or what's valuable? Well, let's look then at the prospect levels. And this is one of those, as I go out and talk to all of you about proposals and turning them on, or even the initial training, there's always a lot of discussion that happens around these particular fields. Let's go ahead and look at a proposal. So these levels always come with a date and an amount, and they are qualification, solicitation, response, expected book, and booked. Now, some of you in your organizations have changed the labels on them so that they match better with what your understanding of them could be. And although that's a possibility and it's something that you can do, change the labels that show up on the page. And if that's what works best for you, that's fine. It does make your reporting a little more challenging because the database fields are more closely tied to the labels that we already have. So label changes can happen, but I think that as long as we set clear expectations up and rules around what each of these stages mean, what does it mean when a proposal is in qualification, what does it mean when it's in solicitation, that gives us the ability to have some very specific rules around how we create new proposals. For example, in my mind, when I think about a proposal and creating it for the very first time, the reason that the proposal is being created is because a prospect has reached some kind of threshold. They have been researched and they have a capacity for giving a certain dollar amount. That's not typically enough in itself to create a proposal. We would usually want to have a specific effort in which we'd like to raise that money for. That's where all of this comes together. So when I first build a proposal and I specify what it's going to, I want to set up how much money I think I can raise for this proposal. That allows us to start a ticker on our proposal with the qualification date and the qualification amount. And that's, again, usually based on research. So if you're lucky enough to have a research group that is helping you develop your prospects, you may have a proposal created with a qualification date and amount, and it may not even be assigned yet. So that's kind of my first step, is qualification. It's set when you define your proposal, and it's not necessarily assigned. It could be assigned to your research team if you actually define the researchers out as development officers. So that would certainly be a possibility. Again, your rules, what you've decided on in your process, really dictate this. So it may not be assigned, or it could be something that your development officers are kicking off. I know that there are some institutions that are establishing proposals for not just big major asks. They are using proposals for much smaller asks that allow them to track the start and end of a particular ask cycle. So qualification is the beginning of that. The next level is solicitation. And solicitation is typically when we went out and talked to our donor or prospect about making that donation or fulfilling that proposal. And now tracking the date that we did that, as well as the amount that we asked for. And this is where our processes come in. This is where our discussion about what's important for us to be able to track really starts to happen. Adding the additional step in here of capturing new dollar amounts each time. If your organization doesn't need that, then certainly don't do that. But it does let us see some trending between what we thought we qualified this person at, and then in the next stage, before the development officer went out to talk to them, did they modify what their ask was going to be from that qualification? Did it go up? Did it go down? And we can start to see some trending about what happens from research to the actual solicitation level. We're also seeing timing. What's the typical time that it takes to move from qualification to the actual solicitation? Now, you'll notice that I have highlighted solicitation. Because this is usually where I think of truly engaging a development officer, the solicitation level, date, and amount are very important within the proposal setup. Not just because this is maybe where you're first assigning a proposal and you are your development officer's really taking ownership of a proposal, but also because the amount that is set against solicitation. So this value, solicitation amount, this is what is delivered back to the prospect information page. And we're going to see that amount here in the solicitation amount. If somebody has multiple solicitations, if somebody has multiple proposals open, you're going to see a greater amount here. So it's the sum of all of the open proposal solicitation amounts that's going to be delivered here. So it's a really good indicator to us of what is the total that this person is currently being asked for. The next level is response. And this one is a little bit controversial. I don't have it highlighted, but again, it comes down to what do we want to report on. So if we want to be able to track, well, what's the difference between what we asked for, solicitation amount and date, and then what was the response back from the donor? Did they respond favorably to that amount that we solicited? Did the amount change based on our discussion? Now we can also see differences between the asked amount and what they maybe countered. Was it higher? Was it lower? The next level that we have is called expected book. And this is another critical date and amount within the proposal process. This is when the proposal should close. So when we're thinking about our timelines and our pipelines, the expected booked amount is when we expect this to close. So we can start to see how much money should we expect to see in a particular month or within a particular period based on the expected book date and the expected book amount. Plus, there's some great functionality that happens when you have a value put into the expected booked amount. And that leads us into the last stage, which is booked. And this is when the proposal is actually closing. When we start to receive contributions in against the proposal, we'll start to add a value and a date into this booked amount. So there are several features, and I wanted to talk about the features tied to the expected booked and to the booked field. If you turn on this feature, which is handled in, so I already talked about the solicitation amount showing up on the prospect information page. So we also have specific items within the proposal that are tied to your actions. So let's talk about that first. When we look at a proposal, and this is one that we just created, and it is, we could go to that, proposals. And this is just created. I really want to see you use the features in here that let you track your efforts, your activity directly against a specific proposal. So once a proposal is open, and this one happens to be tied to John Lacey, so the first thing that I'm going to do, just to make our example here a bit more realistic, is I'll change this over to be assigned to me, and I'm going to change the qualification to a more recent time here and save this. I'm also going to go back to proposals, and as the development officer, I want to come in here and look for proposals that are tied to me. All right, so this is my proposal list. These are all the ones that I'm supposed to be working with. And this one has not been worked. It's not done yet. Here's this micro campaign that we were looking at just a little earlier. But we're going to go and look at, let's look at this one. So this shows us at the top what we set up, qualification, solicitation. Down here in this bottom section, which is called activities, there are 3 different places for adding in notes. So if I had just gotten done talking to this person, this is Agilon, when I got done talking to Agilon about the specific proposal, I can come right down here to contacts within the proposals page and add in my notes about what happened in our discussion. So I might call this a telephone conference. So I'm kind of working this donor a little bit and talking to them about funding this Ag Learning Center mini campaign event at the center, and make the save on this. So it's tied directly to the proposal. If I come back down to activities, I can see it talked about event at the center. Because it's a contact, it's also found then on the contacts and plans page. And here it is, talked about event at the center. So where you decide to add the contact note or the plan or the task, whether or not you add it from the contacts and plans page or the task page, if you add it from the prospect management page, the important thing is that you are, if it's something tied to a proposal, that you make sure that the proposal number has been populated. So in this case, it's populated with 64, which is the micro campaign. The nice thing about doing this from the proposal page is that when you add a contact from a specific proposal, that the proposal number will already be populated for you instead of needing to look it up, which can be an extra step. So that's why it makes it onto my list of things to do. Do your data entry from the proposal page, or you can go to other pages like the contacts and plans and tasks pages or the prospect management page, and you can look up the proposal that it's supposed to be tied to. Because I really like to be able to look at a proposal and know all the things that we've talked about for getting to a resolution on that proposal. There's also great functionality around proposals and contributions. And where we want to make sure that we're consistent with this is when we're on a proposal, in order for this function to work, to have your contributions tied to it and have it actually complete out by itself, you need to make sure that you have an expected booked amount populated. So right now I do not have an expected booked amount, so the automation that's tied to this wouldn't work. The automation is when a gift comes in or when a contribution comes in, pledge, plan, gift, or gift, when that contribution comes in, gift entry can tag the gift to a proposal. And that's going to populate into the contribution section and identify either a gift, a pledge, or a planned gift, and you'll see the detail on the proposal page. You're also going to see the booked amount get populated with the sum of all of those contributions tied to this proposal, and the booked date will update to the most recent of those contributions that's been added. What's cool about this is if you have the expected booked date and, more importantly, the expected booked amount populated, as new contributions are added, as soon as the booked amount, so once contributions start rolling in, as soon as the booked amount equals or is greater than the expected booked amount, the received completed flag is going to automatically be set to yes. So it will actually look at whether or not contributions are coming in, and it will match those up and close this proposal for you based on contributions. In order to turn that feature on, to automatically set that complete flag, you need to turn on in Control Info the Proposal Auto, which is in Control Info. And I'm just going to come in here into Prospects. And here's Proposal Auto, and it explains what's going on. This is saying we want to update the proposal booked amount and the date when contributions come in. The next thing that you need to set is whether or not you want to include expectancies. Do you want to include planned gifts? Do you want to include pledges to pay down a proposal, or do they have to be the actual dollars coming in the door? So you can make that decision. In my mind, if the development officers have gone through and gone to the effort of getting a planned gift in or getting a pledge in, that is enough to fulfill the commitment on the planned gift. So I would typically set proposal auto to yes, proposal DEFCON to yes, and proposal pledge also to yes. So that will include your expectancies, your pledge amounts, your planned gift amounts, and it will not then look at when a pledge payment comes in or when a planned gift payment comes in. Outright gifts and expectancies would be included. And those are all set up in the Control Info and then will be applied to the proposals moving forward. Are any questions about how contributions are applied to a proposal, or why you may or may not want to turn on the auto completion feature? Okay. So a couple other things about proposals and contributions. I think it's very important to make sure that that you stay personally involved as a development officer with the contributions by your prospects. And so what I mean by that is make sure that you know when contributions are coming in. Are you getting alerted somehow? Do you go out and review your prospects' giving history? And if you're shaking your head and saying, no, that'd be way too much work, and how am I supposed to do that? There are definitely things that can be put into place within one that will help you to manage that piece of your job, to help you keep on top of the proposals. So I would suggest a couple of different processes that could be used. If you have Relay, a really nice option would be to receive an alert from Relay when a gift is put in for someone who's assigned to you. Or if we're only concerned about tracking this when we have open proposals, then we could say, send me an alert when a contribution comes in for one of my prospects who has an open proposal, or something like that, but let you know. Because one of the questions is, or one of the concerns that typically comes up when we talk about automatically closing proposals when contributions are applied is, well, how will gift entry know when a gift should or should not be applied to a proposal? And why should they do that? Why should we add that extra step into their job? And one, it's fairly simple for gift entry to do that. But the question of if some gifts should be applied and others should not be applied to a proposal, if that decision is one that really can't be made by gift entry, then these processes are that much more important. So letting you know when those gifts come in so that you can make that recommendation for those contributions to be tied to your proposals. One of those ways is then this gift alert in Relay. If you don't have Relay, and maybe even if you do, setting up scheduled contribution reports that are maybe happening weekly for your prospects. So the way that this report would work is it would kick off every week, maybe at the end of the week, maybe at the beginning of the week. But what you would see then is a list of your prospects that have proposals and whether or not the contributions have been tied, and the contributions that have came in that period, and whether or not they were tied to a proposal or not. Again, I'll let you stay on top of who your proposals are, what contributions are coming in a period, and then whether or not they are being applied properly or improperly to proposals. You may be very interested to know if you have a prospect and a proposal open and there's another proposal open for another development officer, if their contribution was tied to the wrong proposal. So again, being able to stay on top of your proposals and your prospects for the contributions that come in. One of those ways would be a scheduled contribution report. And the last report, I love the scheduled options because then I don't have to do anything, I don't have to remember, it just comes to me. But you may want to be able to do that manually as well. You are going on vacation or you missed a period of time and you want to look at the last 2 weeks instead of 1 week or whatever that might be. You may want to have the same kind of report that might be offered on a scheduled report and instead have it be a manual report that you can run where you can adjust the date range that it's going to pull just to see all giving for a period of time by people that are assigned to you or to prospects that are, and this would be another consideration, prospects assigned to you or prospects where you are the proposal manager. So two distinctions that we'd really want to make when we're putting those reports together is who are we pulling it for and who should get the report. But staying involved with the contributions by your prospect I think is very key, and making that easy for development officers makes this process a lot smoother. Are there any questions before I move on to that about proposals and contributions or the kinds of reports that might be useful at least to manage the contributions coming in? I'll feel really bad if all your microphones are broken. We'll go ahead and move on to maintaining your proposals. I'm not going to, there's lots and lots of things that we could have talked about today. These are the ones that I thought were most poignant to deciding how to use proposals and get them up and running and to make sure that they run smoothly. So one of these that I think gets missed oftentimes is the maintenance of your proposals. Being able to manage your portfolio and the pipeline, one of the reasons we create proposals in the first place is so that we can manage this pipeline. How much money do we have in solicitation? How much money do we have that should be coming in on a certain date using expected booked amount? But being able to manage that's really important. And in order to manage our proposals effectively, we have to know how our management is expecting those proposals to operate. It's not good enough just to turn this on. We have to have specific rules around engagement, how for example, rules about how many open proposals should be allowed per development officer. And that could certainly be ranged based on whether or not you're a development officer that only handles super major prospects versus a development officer that has a lot, has the smaller range prospects. But there's certainly got to be an upper level to this where, you know, we're going to say we can assign X amount of prospects to a development officer, and then taking that one step further, they can only manage X amount of proposals at the same time. So coming up with those rules, making sure that there's good buy-in on those, so that everyone is on a common playing field, and we know what the expectations are around whether or not I should open up a proposal or whether or not I should wait. Because the next rule that I would really want you to consider is rules about how long a proposal, one, can be open, period, but two, how long can it be open in a level? So we were talking about the 5 different levels that are in the proposal. You may have a proposal that's set in qualification. Well, if that proposal sits in qualification without moving on to solicitation for 6, 7 months, 2 months even, how valid is the research that we did to put them into qualification? And I don't know the answer to that, because I'm not sure what you're going to do with research, but there definitely should be rules about how long a proposal can be in a certain stage or in a certain level. And that should be based on some kind of fact of whether or not it's going to lose effectiveness by being open that long. And we may want to look at, maybe it's not just how long something can be open in a particular level, but maybe it's gauged based on whether or not there's been any activity while it's in that level. So how long can we have a proposal open in solicitation without it moving into response, without us having put any new notes or activities or contacts or plans against that proposal? So the idea is to keep these proposals moving. It's a pipeline that these proposals are in, and we really do want to see movement. If they stall, we want to know that. That's something that our development officers might need coaching on. It's something that we want to continue to keep them moving. So setting up some of those rules. And I think this is the last item with maintaining proposals, is making sure that we're completing the proposals. We talked about one of the options to automate that, which I would encourage you to work on getting to be part of one of your processes that will actually complete once the expected booked amount equals the booked amount. But there's plenty of times when we are working on a proposal and the proposal just isn't going to go anywhere. It's done. We need to stay on top of our proposal, and we need to make sure that we're setting those proposals as complete so that they fall off of our active proposal list. As much as we hate to say that this isn't going to happen, it's important for us to maintain the number of proposals that are open and complete them, close them, in order to keep them moving. As well as those proposals that maybe we received some of the money on them, but we don't ever expect to get the remaining money. So the system will auto-close those when expected booked and booked are equal or greater than. But if we received some money and we're not going to receive more, we may need to manually complete that proposal. And if you're not familiar with that field, we'll open up proposals here again. It's the field in the browse called Received Completed. And on the page, it's also labeled as Received Completed. but you'll have a checkbox here to say that it's done. So stay on top of your proposals. Make sure that you're ending them when they need to be ended. You may even have a report that helps you know when you've received money on a proposal, but it's still not closed or completed. And maybe those that have been open for a period of time that is true, so you can go in and get them out of the pipeline. So like I started this, there's a lot of decisions that you can make within your proposals. Making sure that they are good decisions and well thought out before you turn them on, and taking a staged approach to introducing proposals to your development officers is a really good idea, and letting people get used to the fact of what the rules are as we stage through these. Well, that's all I have for you for today. If there are any questions, I can certainly take them now. So we do have a question that came in, and let's go ahead and open up my comments here. The question is, if you connect a proposal on the planned giving screen, what is the dollar field on the planned giving page that's the trigger for the proposal to be marked incomplete? A good question. So on the planned giving page, the value that's going to be brought back into the booked field is going to be the planned giving amount. So let's go into contributions. And Rachel, I think that was your question. So within your planned gift, yeah, that's correct. So it's the planned giving amount in the database. That the label of that will vary based on the giving instrument. So, for example, in this one, which is a charitable remainder trust, it's this estimated face value that will be the value. I might have to check that, Rachel. Yeah, it's got to be that. It's going to be the estimated face value. I was thinking it could be the accounting amount, but that wouldn't be true. This is the expectancy, similar to what we do on a pledge. So it's going to be the will amount, which in this case is called estimated face value. Did that answer your question? Good. All right. Well, thanks again for your time, and I hope that you learned at least something of how I might set up some proposals and help to make that work a little bit better.